an excellent meeting with Prime Minister Modi. Very impressed with the vision that he has for India and the advances that India is making. We look forward to greater opportunities in India.
Very much looking forward to working together with the Prime Minister and everyone in India to achieve tremendous success together.
इस उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए आवश्यक है एजुकेशन, स्किल, इनोवेशन और भारत में हमने इस दिशा में कई प्रयास किए। हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में शिक्षा और स्किलिंग को इंटीग्रेट किया।
You work to ensure that all Indians, especially girls, which I love, have the opportunity to pursue an education and gain the skills they need for our modern workforce. And it's so important. If we want our economies to be strong, we need to invest in young people who are our future.
Now, ahead of the huge Modi-Biden bilateral, let's find out what exactly is on the agenda. So let's begin with focus number one, which is the primary focus in this bilateral meeting, which is on the defense sector. This is about the GE F414 engine deal and MQ-9 drone deal. Now, why is it important? Remember, the attempt is to co-produce F414 engines in India. These are the engines which we are using in the LCA Tejas. This is a technology transfer deal between America's General Electric that's been signed in the form of an MOU with the Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. And this is further going to reinforce that Atmanirbharta push. Now remember, this co-production is very, very important to India because otherwise India will have to go ahead and buy these engines, which is not beneficial for the country. And about the drone deal, Joe Biden and Narendra Modi will be announcing a mega deal on the purchase of General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper armed drones by India. Remember, these have been approved by the Defense Council, and they're the most advanced drones. There are America's drones. America has been using them in international anti-terror ops. And if India has it too, it would bolster India's national security and surveillance capabilities, both in the Indian Ocean and also at the frontier with China. India will then have an edge against China. Let's look at the other aspects when it comes to this defense deal. Upgrade of M77, Striker and howitzers. This is another important defense deal that will be in focus. If we go further, talk about focus number two. It is in the space sector. ISRO, NASA join hands for 2024 mission. This becomes very important. It is going to be a huge boost in India's space explorations. If we go further, this is also expected that India is going to be joining the Artemis Accords for the space exploration. What does that mean? India has in fact decided to join the Artemis Accords, which in fact brings like-minded countries together on the civil space exploration, and NASA and ISRO have agreed to join mission to the international space, and this is going to of course happen in 2024. If you talk about the third focus, it is on mineral security. This is to share extraction technology on crucial mineral mining. If we go further and talk about the focus number 4, it is on telecom cooperation. It is for the open radio access networks, which is going to further boost India's position. The last and the final one, focus number 5, is in fact visas. This is about the entire visas process that is of course going to bolster India's push further. Let me actually bring in my colleague and managing editor Zaka Jacob on the broadcast first and get a sense of what exactly is expected ahead of the big bilaterals. Zaka, you know, we see a lot of people around you, behind you. We will talk about the mood, but the all-important bilateral is the most important thing about today in Washington, D.C. What are you learning vis-a-vis that?
Okay, I'll just get to that in 1 second, but this is the south lawns of the US White House, and we have a crowd of people here who are all chanting just one name, and it's obvious it's that of Prime Minister Modi. Where are you guys from? Hyderabad. You've come from Hyderabad for what? To see Modi. What do you want to tell him? Okay. As you can see, it's almost like an election rally, a political spectacle, if you will. There are thousands of people who've come from different parts of not just the United States, they've come from different parts of India as well. And it is a spectacle. You can see the military band playing, there's music in the background. There is, of course, the ramparts of the White House that is on our north side. But this is the south lawns of the White House. And you can see, camera person Ravinder is showing how this has been set up. So there are people all across in front of the lawns, right where the ceremonial guard of honor will take place. And of course, there is the crowd that you just saw a moment ago on the deep end of the south lawn. So this is where the ceremonial stuff will get underway in, I believe, about an hour and a half from now. Prime Minister Modi will be welcomed by US President Joe Biden and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. There will be the military band that will welcome him. The national songs of both the countries will be played. After which, of course, there will be the ceremonial guard of honor. A gun salute will be given to the Prime Minister. The state visit is the highest form of diplomatic privilege that's been extended by the US White House, by any US administration. And Prime Minister Modi is attending his first state visit here in the United States. So let's try and see if we can speak to some more people here, because I think this mahal is really what it is about. Before, of course, the ceremony begins in about an hour and a half or so. Where are you from? Where have you come from? Houston. You've come from Houston. Why have you come here? Why have you come here?
Come here to see the Modi.
You want to meet Modi? You'll get a chance to meet him today?
Yes.
What will you tell him? आप क्या कहेंगे उनको? What will you tell him?
You're doing well and continue doing it.
Okay. You guys were chanting something? What were you saying? So you can see there are chants of Modi, Modi, Ghar Ghar Modi, and so on. So obviously this is, it's like I said, it's a bit of a spectacle that's happening here on the south lawns of the White House. It's quite incredible. I don't think we've seen these kind of scenes. Yes, Dr. Manmohan Singh had also come here on a state visit, but these kind of scenes, it's almost like I said, it's a political rally of some sort, where supporters of the Prime Minister have come not just from different parts of the US, you heard a gentleman there from Houston, but also from different parts of India. Some of them, of course, have invites for the state dinner that will happen later this evening. But for now, the focus is squarely on all the pomp, the ceremony, just soaking in where you are and the atmosphere of where you are. I mean, like I tweeted this out some time back as well. I guess it's one of the perks of the job, one of the privileges of the job, that you get to report from the White House. You've seen this photograph on, your school textbooks growing up, and here you are standing on the South Lawns reporting this historic visit, this first ever state visit of Prime Minister Modi. We'll get to the details, the bilaterals, the big deals that are expected to be signed. But for now, like I said, it's a lot of music, it's a lot of pomp, it's a lot of ceremony, grandeur, and of course a lot of supporters of Prime Minister Modi. You can see them,
yes,
many of them dressed in the traditional Indian kurta, salwar kameez, and it's, mind you, it's not, it's what, 8:30 in the morning here, it's reasonably cold, it's about 15-16 degrees, and they're all waiting here, and it's been raining for the last couple of days, and they've been waiting here just to try and get a glimpse of Prime Minister Modi. So yeah,
yes,
I think it's a bit of a rock concert meets political rally kind of an atmosphere.
Absolutely. Zaka, I was just about to say that it looks like this is a crowd that's turned out for some kind of a rock concert. But if you actually take a cue from what the Australian Prime Minister had said about Prime Minister Narendra Modi, he's much more than the rock star. But they have good news for all the Indian Americans over there and also people who are working there on work visas. When it is about what is set for the bilaterals, one important thing is the easy renewal of these of those visas, and that also will be a cherry on top and icing on the cake for all the Indians there.
Oh, absolutely, particularly the H-1B holders, because remember, for them, whenever they renew their H-1Bs, you get it initially for 3 years and then you renew it for another 3. But every time you renew your H-1B, you have to leave the United States. Most of them prefer to go to India. You have to go back to a US consulate. and get a stamp. Unless you have that stamp on your passport, you cannot renew your H-1B. So I think they are trying to now avoid this. They are trying to ensure that H-1B visa holders will be able to renew their visas in the US itself without having to leave this country. I think that's going to be a very, very big one. Remember, the quota every year is about 65,000. That I don't think is a governmental decision. That's more a US congressional decision. I don't think we'll hear anything on increasing the quota of H-1Bs. But I think this was a big pain point, particularly for techies who are here, you know, for 3 years, for 6 years. Some of them have been here for 10 years. And also the other thing that we're expecting is the process of getting a green card. If you've been here in the US, worked on a long-term visa, you're eligible to apply for a green card after 5 years. But there are many, many people, thousands of Indian Americans who've been here for, you know, 10, 15 years and yet have not been got their green cards processed. But here there are some folks. Let's try and see. So H-1B के बारे में कुछ visa renewal होने वाला. Yeah, what are your expectations? Front, but like I said,
yes,
top of the end will be the defense deals,
yes,
will be the critical emerging technologies, and all of the, you know, strategic stuff.
And one final thing, Zaka, considering this is an all-important Indian American community over there, the interaction with the diaspora is something that all of them must be looking forward to. And it is important from an Indian perspective also, considering the Indian Americans play a very important role in debates in the Congress.
Oh, absolutely, because the stronger you are numerically, the more powerful you are as a vote bank. And right now, the Indian American community is about 3.5 million. Of course, not all of them are US citizens, and if you're not a US citizen, you cannot vote. About 18 lakh, I'm told, is the number of US citizens who are of Indian origin, and they, of course, have voting rights. One of the things that they've been talking about for a while is that the Indian American community has traditionally voted Democrat. There was an attempt by Donald Trump in the past to try and tilt some of them to vote Republican. But I think given the number of people who've come here, I think they've come for just one man, and that is Prime Minister Modi. So once again, I'm trying to get to some of these people. What are your requests? What do you want solved in terms of India-America issues, visas, education, etc.? Anything that you would like to tell the leaders?
Yes. India's progress is world's progress.
Okay, India's progress is the world's progress, is what one gentleman was saying. But like I said, I just want to quickly round off with, what to expect in terms of the defense deals. The jet engine deal has already been made official by GE. They will be partnering with HAL for the Mk2, the Tejas light combat aircraft. The jet engines will be made in India. And then, of course, the Predators That'll get announced today in the bilateral. We don't know the exact number of Predators, but we're given to understand that all three services, Air Force, Navy and the Army, have asked for a requisite number of Predator armed drones. So these are the things that we're looking forward to in terms of the substantive part of this visit. But right now, as you can see, and as you might have guessed over the last 5-10 minutes or so during this live, it's all about the pomp, ceremony, music, grandeur. Like I said, even for somebody like me, a reporter, I guess this is like ticking a box. This is ticking something off in my bucket list.
Absolutely. And Zaka, we are not yet willing to let you go, so we have more questions for you, considering the fervor around you is just spectacular. We'd like to understand this one thing also. There is a press conference that's also slated after the bilaterals with President Joe Biden, and we believe Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in a rare show, is also going to take a couple of questions from the media. What do we know about that?
So this has always been the sort of standard format whenever there is, especially with the United States, especially with US presidents, whether they are visiting India or vice versa, if the Indian Prime Minister is visiting the US, questions are taken. Usually it's 2 questions to each side, 2 to the Indian side, 2 to the American side. I remember when President Obama had come in 2015, he also had taken a question. One was from an AP reporter, one was from an Indian reporter. So that is generally standard practice that they follow. The buzz today amongst the journalists who are here, particularly the ones who've come from Delhi, is who from the Indian side will get to ask that question. We don't know yet. Only the folks in the MEA do know that. But it's usually sort of standard practice. There are 2 questions that the American side asks, and there are 2 questions that the Indian side asks. We will get to know. We will get to know in about, what? The press conference is slated for 12:30 this afternoon.
Yes.
That's about 3.5 hours away. We will know what those questions are. But like I said, for now, I just want to leave you with these pictures, you know, overlooking the beautiful Washington Memorial, all of these Indian Americans who've gathered here, waving, you know, the India flag in the one hand and the US flag in the other. I mean, this is momentous. I mean, this is what it is. It is truly historic in and of itself that on the south lawns of the White House, you have, there must be what, about 5,000 people, maybe 10,000 people, all through this, and all of them, like I said, have come here for the pomp and ceremony and the grandeur, and of course, a chance to get to meet Prime Minister Modi, at least get a glimpse of him, if not get a chance to meet him.
Absolutely, Zaka, and we are hoping here back home that you and CNN News 18 manages to have an edge when it is about that one question to Prime Minister Narendra Modi in that press conference. We leave you to it. Thank you so much for all of the update from outside and inside White House. We are now going to throw this open to my guests who are joining us on Viewpoint this evening. Pinak Ranjan Chakrabarti, who's the former Secretary of the Ministry of External Affairs, is with us. Also with us is Mr. James Dorsey, who's the International Affairs expert. Let me actually take this across to Mr. Chakrabarti for the moment. Mr. Chakrabarti, we were just getting a lowdown of what really is expected. I believe Professor Swaran Singh, who's from the School of International Studies, JNU, is also with us. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation. But Mr. Chakrabarti, what do you think is expected after the big Modi and Biden bilateral happens? What do you think is on the cards?
Well, I think there will be further consolidation. This is not an overnight thing. This all began early part of this century when the Clinton administration was in the White House. It changed things, and slowly through 4 presidents, things have moved on. But today we have reached a stage of greater sort of interaction. There's a flurry of visits, and of course culminating in this visit, a state visit, etc., which is of course part of protocol, just hyping it up a bit, like we do in India when we have a state visit. You know, the Rashtrapati Bhavan is used for all these ceremonies, etc. So what we are seeing today is another cycle in the changing geopolitics of our era, and I think this is what is bringing the 2 countries together, the 2 largest democracies, no doubt, who have also been in the past called estranged democracies.
Yes.
Because our global interests and visions did not coincide in the past. But that's the past, and I think today we are living in a different era. As I said, the geopolitical cycle, the geoeconomic cycle has changed, and things are different today. We have a change in the balance of power in the world, which is shifting towards Asia. But the US, of course, is a global power, and it has always been in Asia in various ways. It has allies in Asia. It is seeking a greater sort of a role for India in Asia. We have the Quad. We have so many things happening that it sometimes it's difficult to keep track. Technology, innovation, then defense technology. That is probably the high point of this visit. The agreement on the sort of jet engines is a big thing.
Yes.
We are of course buying other things also from. So slowly, what we are seeing gradually is that the USA is becoming a major defense partner of India, something which traditionally the Soviet Union and Russia sort of filled that role. So there is a change. So there is a change that is happening, and clearly the interests, the national interests, are dictating this change. There is obviously the post-COVID era, as we call it now, has its own sort of compulsions, and of course the Ukraine war has its own compulsions.
Yes.
We have differences, and we will continue to have differences.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that these differences should override. I think this is a very mature thing. Earlier, when I was dealing with the US in MEA, it used to be a very one-sided thing that, you sign on the dotted line and that's it. We are not willing to listen to you. That kind of approach does not work, of course, and it did not work then, particularly on certain crucial issues like the nuclear issue. But we finished that in 2008. Mercifully, we finished that. That's no longer an issue now. So we are in for a greater degree of consolidation in the years ahead.
All right. So is that correct to say, Mr. James Dorsey, then, that in an attempt to build these supply chains, meeting with American CEOs like the Tesla chief, Mr. Elon Musk, is part of India putting itself out there so that it's recognized as one of the world leaders, it wanting a seat at the high table? How important would that be?
It's very important. I think what we're seeing, and I agree with your former speaker, that there is change, but I think one needs to put that change into perspective. India is in the process of becoming, call it a superpower, at some point on par with the United States and China. India has its own interests. I think where you're seeing commonality at the moment is in terms of facing up to China and the synergies that you have between the United States and India. And there are lots of synergies, there's no question about it.
Yes.
But if we go back to the evolution with China, if you wish, I think there's something to be learned from that. And that evolution was that the United States envisioned China as becoming another major democracy, and that ultimately it would, as would China, benefit from the opening up of China. That hasn't quite worked out that way. Now, I'm not suggesting that India would go down the road of China in any form or fashion, but what I am suggesting is that part of the rivalry that you see between the United States and China is that as global powers, they have diverging interests. And I think that is a process that over time you could also see with the United States and India.
So, Mr. Dorsey, where do you see India's position vis-a-vis China, considering Mr. Antony Blinken was just meeting with Xi Jinping? After he'd returned, you'd seen a very, very strong statement that has come out in the form of US President Joe Biden calling Xi Jinping a dictator. If this is what the state of affairs is between US and China, this is further spiraling that entire relationship down.
Well, I think, first of all, one has to put all of this into a context. Both China and the United States have an interest in ensuring that whatever differences and tensions there are, that those do not spin out of control. In other words, it's about managing, not resolving disputes or conflicts. I'm not sure that the Biden comment about Xi Jinping was a comment that was supposed to be public. and it was made more by Biden, the presidential candidate, than Biden, the president. Now, no question about it, the Chinese are angry. They're going to exploit it for what it's worth, but they too understand that China is going to be a major issue in the U.S. presidential campaign, and not everything or not much about what is going to be said in that campaign is necessarily going to be friendly or positive.
All right. Professor Swaran Singh, I'd like to come to you at the moment, considering the question of China remains an all-important question, whether it is vis-a-vis India or vis-a-vis United States of America. These defense deals that are going to be procured while Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in the United States, especially the MQ-9 drones, is going to be putting India at a position of edge vis-a-vis China. Consolidating its position along the frontiers of China, it becomes really important. And also the meetings with the American business tycoons and investors that Prime Minister Modi is having, that also becomes very significant, because all of the people, all of the businesses which are currently running in China, and they're nervous about functioning out of Beijing, they will next turn to India in that case.
I think, first of all, there is perhaps far too much focus on defense deals, which are significant. There is no doubt about it. But there's a whole range of engagement which is building between India and United States.
Yes.
You saw focus on semiconductors, on rare earth materials, on education, research, and so on.
Yes.
So first of all, I think that is important to understand that the canvas is growing larger and bigger. In which case there are a whole spectrum of partnerships that United States and India are planning to build. And the rock concert-like environment that you see is only a reflection of the mood now. Because India clearly is now is a very significant player in international relations. It's a fastest growing economy among the G20 countries. It's the 5th largest economy, slated to be, sooner or later, 2027 or 2030, becoming 3rd largest. So for Americans, at the base of it, per dollar returns is what matters. And therefore, they would engage India in a whole range of partnerships that they can, no doubt. You asked about drones.
Yes.
From President Obama's period, this was called the signature weapon of President Barack Obama in Afghanistan. So these, whether for surveillance or for very selective surgical strikes in war, these are now the most frontier weapon systems. And India would definitely benefit in that sense in strengthening our national defense vis-a-vis our neighboring countries, which are often our adversaries and challenge. No doubt, India is the world's largest importer of defense equipment, and United States is world's largest exporter. For some reason, because we had a very special relationship with the Soviet Union and Russia, is that India was not on the list of United States in that sense, and United States was not seen as the largest supplier of defense equipment to India. Of the 17 top nations who import weapon systems, United States is the top supplier for 13 out of them. And potentially the same thing could happen. But let me just quickly make a point. With Soviet Union and Russia for a very long time, almost for half a century, this continued to be simply licensed production mechanism of assembly lines. And very gradually, India moved to an example like BrahMos, where there was a joint research and development and co-production.
Yes.
With United States, we are starting, we are hitting the ground running in that sense, with co-production already being in the picture, and potentially joint research and development would also come in place. So a whole range of space technologies, semiconductors, rare earth materials, defense technologies, and of course the trade itself, overall trade and visas that you mentioned.
Yes.
So what I am fundamentally saying is that it seems far too much focus on defense and two deals that we are talking of. But one has to look at the larger canvas where a whole range
absolutely.
of
And Professor Singh, to be honest, we are obviously concentrating on other things. We're concentrating about the space program deals, also about the visas that you just mentioned. But let me bring in Mr. Pirag Ranjan Chakrabarti back. Mr. Chakrabarti, the fact that this interaction that is right now pending when it is about the diaspora between Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Professor Singh just mentioned the rock star-like, rock concert-like atmosphere that we see outside the White House. that interaction with the Indian American community of the Prime Minister becomes very important. How much of a role that is going to be playing, while Prime Minister Narendra Modi is there in the United States of America?
Let us remember that the Indian American community, which is, let's say, about 2 million or so American nationals, and the rest green card holders and other on work visas, etc. They have invested a lot in living their lives there and focusing on India-US partnerships, because many of them, like H-1B visas, work for American and Indian companies who deal, in the software and services sectors. So I think that they have invested a lot, and India recognizes their role and their ability to bridge, not just in terms of cultural and other aspects, but in very hard areas like commerce and trade and investments and innovation and technology. I was told that there are more than 200 collaboration between Indian and American laboratories and other institutions that are currently going on in these areas. So I think there is, as Professor Singh said, the canvas is very large, and we can focus on one domain or the other, but the spectrum is large now, and it is very, very large, and there are lots of people, lots of stakeholders in this.
Okay.
So I think what has happened is that because of the older technology restrictions, which the US had applied on India because of the nuclear issue, but which of course didn't prevent them from allowing very high technologies to flow into China, because under US laws, China was a declared nuclear power and an NPT signatory, so it did not prevent US laws from blocking certain technologies, dual use and stuff. But they did block it for India because India was not a signatory. So anyway, that problem was resolved, and that is why you see this phenomenal, I think, expansion in the spectrum of activities, bilateral activities. And one thing, the US also, has the president said, decoupling is now not being used. It is de-risking. American companies and American large multinationals also want a foothold in India. They already have one, but they want to expand it. And this is why, because the next era in our history is going to be digital, and that is where most of the technology advances are going to be made, and most of the vectors of economic development will come in that domain, and that is where India wants Atmanirbharta also, and India also wants manufacturing. India's low manufacturing in the sense of contribution to its GDP is a factor.
Yes.
And that is why India wants to attract manufacturing, because India has a problem of unemployment, and we have to ensure that we provide unemployment. The services sector, which does provide a lot of employment, cannot absorb all the people that we have. I mean, those who can work, the young people. So skilling is required. They have to learn new skills. It's a whole very, very complex and a long-term plan. This is not something that came into the open domain overnight, and it's a long game. As I think President Biden said, it's a long game.
Absolutely. Mr. Jack Dorsey, let's address the elephant in the room. There are a lot of Democrats who have been pressing upon President Joe Biden to bring up this entire concern about human rights violation and the freedom of the press in India with the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Do you think that is going to make it as part of the conversation?
I think it's going to be mentioned, but as the National Security Council advisor, or National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said yesterday, but Mr. Biden is not going to lecture Mr. Modi. I think what that basically means is, and it's part of a larger issue for the United States, if China is transiting to become a great power, the United States is transiting from what was a unipolar U.S. Dominated world order to a multipolar world order. And part of its problem there is a problem that it's had perennially, but it comes much more to the fore. and that is that what it needs to do in terms of realpolitik geopolitics, it clashes with what we would need to do to uphold its values and principles, and it has to strike a balance there, and it hasn't quite done so. In the case of the meeting that we're going to see this today, in a little while, at the White House, the United States has actually decided that on the human rights and democracy issue, it will drop the ball.
All right. Professor Singh, I'd want your opinion on this. Considering it's almost a plant-based diplomacy that will be served at the India State dinner for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, considering he's a vegetarian. And we do know about how President Joe Biden is very picky when it comes to his own food choices. But, other than making light of this entire situation, this also emphasizes upon how strongly United States of America is looking at these ties with India, considering these are the conversations that will be very important and will be touched upon, but in a very, very, important and a sort of strategic way.
Without doubt, as you know yourself, the minutest details of such important events are planned very meticulously. But what I want to underline is, if you remember the first visit to White House that Prime Minister had, he was fasting during those days. And he had only chosen to have water during the dinner meeting. So, it shows that, this is a stage where India doesn't have to really worry about these issues of who is choosing what kind of food. This is matter for these people who are supposed to take care of these things. Leaders are not supposed to be worried about these things. Obviously, they want to make sure that they constantly keep pressing the positive buttons. So they don't want to bring in issues where anything could create a sense of discomfort to either side, because intention here is to build partnership of two nations that see that they can do a lot together. United States sees India as the only rising, huge, almost the commentator sharing this program with us mentioned India as a superpower. So I think in that sense, India is the only large-sized, rapidly growing economy and power in international relations that United States, as of now, doesn't have as an ally. A lot of others are allies. China is adversary. So, in that sense, United States is taking care that they calibrate that partnership and friendship very, very meticulously with India. So whether it is food on the dinner table or it is all other elements of this entire, particularly 22nd June, when the whole day is every hour to hour planned. I don't think Joe Biden recently has spent that much time with any other international leader. So that is clearly an indication that they want to engage India in a very, very careful manner. So I'm sure they will not press buttons which are going to create comfort, whether it is food or any other issue. They will constantly ensure that the relationship is built stronger between the two sides.
Mr. Chakrabarti, do you agree? Do you agree that President Joe Biden choosing to eat vegetarian because Prime Minister Narendra Modi is one of the ways of looking at how much of importance United States of America is placing on cultivating these important ties with India? And also in that regard, how much of an emphasis on this human rights angle do you think President Biden will be pressing upon?
Food part is a very gracious gesture on the part of but it is in tune with the atmosphere and the tenor of the relationship and the visit. So I will only say that. I mean, but on the human rights issue, I do want to say that there are powerful lobbies in the United States which believe that human rights should be the primary focus rather than part of the deal. But I don't think the U.S. administration buys that argument that you can choose to use human rights in sort of geopolitical kind of security situations. If they had, they wouldn't have had a relationship with Pakistan during the Cold War, when human rights was put in the freezer and not brought out as an issue. Or with China, when the U.S. opened up with China and decided to transfer technologies, get China back into the WTO. Human rights wasn't an issue, and it did not stop them. So I don't see human rights as an insurmountable barrier.
Okay.
It is useful because the administration has to look at these lobbies also. There are powerful lobbies, and their wishes and their public perceptions, etc., have to be sort of managed, if I may say so. But human rights, in my view, is not the crux of the issue. It can never be the core of our bilateral relationships. It will be there, and as Jake Sullivan, the NSA said, the American NSA, that both countries are imperfect democracies. If there are human rights problems in India, and there are human rights problems in the USA as well. So, and I think each of us have to deal with it. But we cannot stand on a podium and start lecturing each other on human rights.
Absolutely. One final thing that I'd want to ask both Professor Singh and Mr. Chakraborty. Professor Singh, I'll begin with you. Talking about the situation when it comes to economic ties between India and United States. From 190 billion US dollars, now they are planning to expand it to 500 billion US dollars in the coming few years. How practical do you think that suggestion is going to be?
I think this time the enthusiasm makes it little more convincing, though this idea of taking the bilateral trade to $500 billion is almost about 10 to 15 years old. This has been mentioned many times. And this was mentioned in terms of the potential that these two economies have, the largest economy of the world and the fifth largest economy. But I think because a lot of doors are opening now in terms of partnerships being built, technology transfers being discussed, investments from United States looking like far more a possibility. In that sense, I think this time when they sort of mention $500 billion trade, this looks relatively convincing that it had looked earlier.
All right. All right. On that note, I'd like to end this broadcast. In fact, this debate, I would go further to my colleague Zaka, who is who is there at the White House. I'd like to thank Pinak Ranjan Chakraborty, Professor Swaran Singh, and also James Dorsey for joining us on this important debate. But right now, we're getting some important reactions from outside the White House, the Indian American community, all enthusiastic ahead of meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Let's take a look at all of that.
It's not even describable. We are so excited and so happy and so proud of our Prime Minister and our country. And all I can say is Bharat Mata ki jai. ऐसे सपूत और पैदा हो जिससे कि हमारे लीडर्स का वर्ल्ड के लोग उनको प्यार करें, उनको इज्जत करें. ये हमारी इज्जत है. So we take pride. I've been here for 45 years. Never see anything like this in the White House. Never.
I would come from anywhere from the world to meet Mr. Prime Minister of our country, and he's the only one the whole world knows about him. No, even small kids, sometimes when we talk, everybody knows about him, and he's such a great leader. He can be role model for rest of the leaders of the world, and I'm so proud that I got this opportunity to be here even with my broken arm. Thank you.
I'm the only non-Indian here, and Prime Minister Modi is doing good for India. If he's not doing good, most of American Fortune 500 won't be having Indians as their CEO. And if he's not doing good, you won't see this large crowd coming to receive him. I have seen presidents come to the United States, people from their country, none have commanded this crowd. It means he's doing good. Let him continue doing the good work. May God bless him and bless India and the United States of America.
Something I think the US side has taken up. And we know the challenges there, and there's a sentiment at the moment in the US that is not very favorable to immigration. But nevertheless, the point being made by many Indians and those who understand, the dynamics of this, is that this really benefits both sides. That you have sort of skills that the U.S. needs for its own growth in the future, It has its own here in the US. We have our own challenges, and we do need to up the game, if you will, in terms of technology, education, skilling. And of course, India has that challenge as well, has many skilled service employees that can be absorbed, but can also work here. So together, this model is not new, but the point is to continue it, and it really is a win-win. So having the domestic sensitivities have to be taken into account. There's no question. India does that on trade. So the US naturally will do it on immigration, and that has to be expected. But even if you account for that, if you do the Venn diagram, there is enough there in common that both countries can benefit from.
Right, and when you talk about that mutual benefit, and there's also the labor force, and that is also when we talk about skilling for the future, we are looking at a time where the inroads have already been made by artificial intelligence. Could this also pose a threat to the existing labor force in both the markets, whether it is India or the United States?
Yeah, so I think that's what I was referring to, that there are sensitivities on immigration that are politically the reality, and those have to be taken into account. The United States government here is answerable to its own people, as it should be, and likewise on the Indian side. So, but that doesn't mean that there cannot be a commonality. So one has to find that sweet spot in the middle that benefits both sides and yet preserves the concerns that each domestic constituencies on each side might have. And I think the two sides are quite committed to working out progress in that direction. There are a number of areas in which we're expecting announcements. This is hopefully one of them.
Thanks to you, Sarang, for joining in. I'm sure you can hear the audio. It speaks volumes of Prime Minister's popularity within the Indian diaspora, which has sort of witnessed this kind of meteoric rise. Before we delve into topics of foreign policy and geopolitics, let's also take a moment to acknowledge the kind of power soft power has to gain those hard outcomes that the Indian government is trying to, gain, as far as, using this as an ice-breaking moment to gain perhaps greater mileage when it comes to strengthening that bilateral relationship between India and the United States is concerned. I want to know from you, Sarang, what has been the sentiment within the Indian American community as far as Prime Minister Modi's state visit is concerned, because remember, he's made those visits in the past as well, but this is his maiden state visit.
Yes, thank you for having me on the show. Well, he's certainly very popular among the Indian American diaspora. I think that has been true for quite some time, and you can see that sentiment expressed. He's also highly resonant in terms of in him and India in Washington in terms of the policy circles, Congress, the White House, and really all facets of U.S. policy-making circles. So it's both the diaspora and the government and associated figures who are looking forward to what comes out of this for India-U.S. relations.
Right, and when we talk about Prime Minister Modi's popularity with the Indian diaspora, this has witnessed a meteoric rise since 2014, and something that has also been capitalized by not just the Biden government, but also in the past, say in 2019, when we witnessed Donald Trump invite Prime Minister Modi to that Howdy Modi event in Houston. We know that 2019 was again a very pivotal, crucial year for the United States, and we are looking at another pivotal year, which is 2023. We all know both the countries are now expected to go to election next year. But having said that, what will this mean for a year that is so critical for the United States, taking into consideration that the Indian American community is a massive voting bloc now?
Indian Americans are running in presidential elections. We have two candidates, both on the Republican Party side, that have Indian origin, and and there have been others before, and there will be doubtlessly many more in the future. So the Indian American community is among, if not the most successful immigrant communities in the United States at this point. It is more than 4 million strong. It has done extremely well in terms of education and wealth, and it's translating that into political influence. So all in all, this creates a very different sort of a relationship between the US and India beyond the strategic imperative, which is change.
Welcome back. You're watching Viewpoint with me, Griha. Let's now get you a lowdown on what exactly is happening outside the White House ahead of the India State Dinner with Prime Minister Narendra Modi in attendance in the United States of America in Washington, D.C. My colleague and managing editor, CNN News 18, Zaka Jacob, has all the updates.
I'm inside the White House. I guess it's one of the parts of, the privileges of the job, that you get access to these famous places and famous people. So this is where it is. This is where we're painting the picture for you. This is inside the White House complex where in about a couple of hours from now, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden will be arriving here. They will then take part in what is the opening ceremony. That's going to happen on the south lawns. That's on the other side of the building. And you can see some of the media personnel are being sort of taken away to the south lawns. But this is where all the action is going to be today. It will start with a ceremonial welcome. The military bands will be playing. There will be a gun salute as well for the Prime Minister. And then that will be followed by delegation level talks at about 11 o'clock local time. And it will also then culminate with one-on-one talks between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden of the United States. A whole bunch of deals are in the anvil, which are being talked about. You talked about the defense deals. You talked about the critical emerging technologies. I'm given to understand that there will be new consulates that will be open. India will open consulates in Seattle, and America will be opening consulates in Bengaluru as well as in Ahmedabad. So that is another big one. Also, we are told the finer details are still being worked out. There's going to be some big announcement on H-1B in a way that H-1B visa holders, and there are a lot of them here in the US who are of Indian origin, need not leave the United States, come back to India or to travel to any third country in order to renew their H-1Bs, in order to get a stamp on their H-1B. So they're working on that deal as well. So a whole bunch of deals are expected to be signed in the next few hours. It'll start in a couple of hours, under 2 hours. 10 o'clock local time is when the ceremonial opening ceremony, as it were, the welcome for the Prime Minister will happen. So I'm going to go in now as all the press pool is being taken into the White House. I'll toss it over back to you and we'll rejoin you shortly.
It's not even describable. We are so excited and so happy and so proud of our Prime Minister and our country. And, all I can say is Bharat Mata ki jai. ऐसे सपूत और पैदा हो जिससे कि हमारे लीडर्स का वर्ल्ड के लोग उनको प्यार करें, उनको इज्जत करें. ये हमारी इज्जत है. तो we take pride. I've been here for 45 years. Never see anything like this in the White House. Never.
I would come from anywhere from the world to meet Mr. Prime Minister of our country, and he's the only one the whole world knows about him. No, even small kids, sometimes when we talk, everybody knows about him, and he's such a great leader. He can be role model for rest of the leaders of the world. And I'm so proud that I got this opportunity to be here, even with my broken arm. Thank you.
I'm the only non-Indian here, and Prime Minister Modi is doing good for India. If he's not doing good, most of American Fortune 500 won't be having Indians as their CEO. And if he's not doing good, you won't see this large crowd coming to receive him. I have seen presidents come to the United States, people from their country, none have commanded this crowd. It means he's doing good. Let him continue doing the good work. May God bless him and bless India and the United States of America.
इस उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए आवश्यक है एजुकेशन, स्किल, इनोवेशन, और भारत में हमने इस दिशा में कई प्रयास किए हैं. हमने नेशनल एजुकेशन पॉलिसी में शिक्षा और स्किलिंग को इंटीग्रेट किया है। स्किल इंडिया मिशन के तहत हमने अब तक 50 मिलियन लोगों को स्किलिंग किया है और हम 15 मिलियन लोगों को फ्यूचर स्किल और आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस, एडिटिव मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, ब्लॉकचेन, ड्रोन, इन सारे क्षेत्रों में हम स्किल कर रहे हैं। जहां एक और अमेरिका के पास उच्च कोटि के शिक्षण संस्थान है, एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजीज है, वहीं भारत के पास विश्व की सबसे बड़ी युवा फैक्ट्री है। और इसलिए मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत और अमेरिका की साझेदारी सस्टेनेबल और इंक्लूसिव ग्लोबल ग्रोथ का इंजन साबित होगी। अमेरिका में कम्युनिटी कॉलेज द्वारा निभाई जा रही अहम भूमिका के लिए मैं हृदय से आप सबका बहुत बहुत अभिनंदन करता हूं। फ्रेंड्स, भारत और अमेरिका के बीच शिक्षा और रिसर्च में आपसी सहयोग के लिए मैं जरूर कुछ विचार साझा करना चाहता हूं। इस साझा प्रयास में जरूरी है कि गवर्नमेंट, इंडस्ट्री, एकेडेमिया, टीचर्स और स्टूडेंट्स सभी को शामिल किया जाए। एक इंडिया वीएस टीचर्स एक्सचेंज प्रोग्राम की शुरुआत के विषय हम सोच सकते हैं। दुनिया भर में फैले साइंटिस्ट और एंटरप्रेन्योर्स का भारत के संस्थानों के साथ एंगेजमेंट बढ़ाने के लिए हमने 2015 में विज्ञान ग्लोबल इनिशिएटिव ऑफ एकेडमिक नेटवर्क अभियान शुरू किया था। मुझे बताते हुए खुशी है कि इसके तहत अब तक यूएस से 750 फैकल्टी मेंबर्स भारत आ चुके हैं। मैं यूएस में शिक्षा और रिसर्च से जुड़े सर्विंग और रिटायर्ड लोगों से अनुरोध करूंगा कि वे अपनी छुट्टियां, खासतौर पर विंटर ब्रेक, भारत में बिताएं।
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Shortly from now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will receive a ceremonial welcome at the White House. An event expected to see close to 1,000 members in attendance, and there are multiple thousands outside waiting to catch a glimpse of him. Subsequently, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden will engage in a high-level bilateral dialogue. The discussions are expected to focus on economic, defense and technological partnerships between the two countries and climate change. We're already seeing a spate of agreements being approved or signed between the two countries. Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi will address a joint sitting of the US Congress. He will become only the third leader in the world and the only Indian leader to do so twice. There is a certain momentum now building to this visit. India has also signed the Armistice Accords today. ISRO and NASA will now launch a joint space mission in 2024, we are told. This relationship is now receiving unprecedented thrust from both sides, and most part of the world is keen to see a positive effect for the world from the Indo-US partnership. It is also making a few very jittery for good reason. Are we truly in a new era for India-US relationship, and how will this friendship shape the world coming forward? We'll take those questions with our guests joining us in just a bit, as we also get you live coverage from the White House. Let's also take a look at what happened on the second day of the Prime Minister's US visit. US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcoming Narendra Modi at the White House earlier this morning. Just before the White House meet, Jill Biden and PM Modi addressed an event on Skill for Future event at the National Science Foundation in Virginia as well, where Jill Biden emphasized on bringing world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy together. The big debate and the coverage that's coming up in just a bit as we bring you live of more what is happening at the White House. Are we in a new era for Indo-US ties?